Okay, guys, today we are doing EE2. All right, we're going to try and aim for 90. I realize it's going to be very challenging to get there. Don't get frustrated. Do your best and rewatch the notes video until it really starts to make sense. But the examples I gave you in that notes video are going to be pretty similar to what you're going to see here. So when I look at this, I'm looking at the square root of 18, which is not a perfect square, but it has a perfect square factor, 9. So I'm going to break it up into square root of 9 times the square root of 2. Okay, so 9 times 2 is going to give me 18. So the square root of 9 times the square root of 2 gives me the square root of 18. Now, square root of m to the 10th. Since the exponent is even, it's going to be a perfect square. Okay, so we'll take the square root here. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root here is going to be divide the exponent by 2. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. So the square root of m to the 10th is m to the 5th. Okay, and then square root 2 right here. Now, okay, so we're going to simplify to 3m to the 5th power times the square root of 2. Okay. Now, let me see if I can delete this. We've got square root of 50 y to the 6th. Now, square root of 50 is not a perfect square, but it does have a perfect square factor, 25. So we'll break this up into the square root of 25 times the square root of 2. Okay, y to the 6th, well, that's an even exponent, so it is a perfect square. Okay, so square root of 25 I can take, it's 5. Square root of y to the 6th we can take, divide the exponent by 2. 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. So the square root of y to the 6th is going to be y to the 3rd power. I know that looks sloppy. Square root of 2 we can't take, so it stays underneath the radical. So 5y to the 3rd power times the square root of 2 is going to be our solution. Now, 12 is not a perfect square, but once again, has a perfect square factor in it. So we're going to break that up into the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. Okay, square root of s to the 10th. Well, 10 is an even number, so it is going to be a perfect square root. So we'll take the square root of 4, that's just 2. Square root of s to the 10th, 10 divided by 2 is 5. So s to the 5th is going to be the square root. This we can't take the square root of, so it stays on the end. So our simplified answer is going to be 2 s to the 5th power square root 3. Okay. Now we've got square root of 75, which is not a perfect square, but it can be broken up into square root 25 times square root 3 times the square root of d to the 10th. Once again, the exponent is even, so it's going to be a perfect square. Okay, so square root of 25 is 5. Square root of d to the 10th, 10 divided by 2 is 5. So d to the 5th is going to be its square root. Square root of 3 we can't take, so it's going to stay on the end. And our answer is going to be 5d to the 5th power times square root 3. Okay. Now, 18. These are all similar. Okay. Once we get into maybe like the 60s, you're going to start to see some problems, so you're going to have to bear with me. You guys can fast forward the tape if you need to, if you got the idea. But we're going to need to take a look at some odd exponents in a minute. Okay, so 18 is not a perfect square root, but it has a perfect square root factor of 9. So square root 9 times square root 2 gives you square root of 18. The exponent here is even, so we can take the square root of it. Square root of 9 is going to give me 3, and square root of r to the 4th, 4 divided by 2 is 2, so r to the 2nd is going to be its square root. This square root of 2 I can't take, so it stays underneath the radical. So 3 r to the 2nd times square root 2 is going to be our answer. Still no odd exponents, but you will eventually have to deal with them. Okay, so square root of 12 t to the 6th, or I'm sorry, t to the 10th. So in this case, cannot take the square root of 12, but it has a perfect square factor, square root 4. So we'll break it up into square root 4, square root 3 times square root of t to the 10th. Okay. Square root of 4 I can take. It's 2. T to the 10th I can take the square root of because the exponent's even. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So square root of t to the 10th is going to be t to the 5th. Square root of 3 I can't take, so it stays inside. Okay, so 2 t to the 5th power times square root 3. Okay, we've got our first odd. So it took me to 49 to get my first odd problem. All right, so 12 we're going to have to break up, and q to the 3rd we're going to have to break up as well. So 12 is not a perfect square, but it has a perfect square factor. 4 square root of 4 times square root of 3. Now, q to the 3rd is not a perfect square factor. We can't divide 3 evenly. But if we break it up into q squared times q to the 1st. So q to the 2nd times q to the 1st gives you q to the 3rd. Square root of 4 I can take. It's 2. Square root of q squared I can take. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So q to the 1st is going to be the perfect square root here. Now this root 3 and this root q we can't take the square root of, so the two of them will join and sit underneath that radical. Okay, so 2q square root 3q is going to be your simplified answer. Okay, now we're back to even exponents. I'll do a few more. I want to end when I've got like a couple odds under my belt. Now, square root of 45 I can't take, but it is made of the square root of 9 times the square root of 5. Okay. Now, square root of c to the 4th, the exponent's even, so we can take the perfect square of it. So square root of 9 is going to be 3. Square root of c to the 4th, 4 divided by 2 is 2. So c squared is going to be the square root of c to the 4th. Square root of 5 we can't take, so it stays underneath the radical. So 3 c to the 2nd power times square root of 5. Even as my score is going up, I'm still not really seeing a lot of odds. All right, so I'm gonna just try and skip through some of these. So this would be square root 4 times square root 5. So square root 4 is going to be 2. Square root of d to the 4th would give me d to the 2nd. And that root 5 is going to be still underneath. All right, there's another odd, and I'll probably end on this one. I wish there was more practice, but you're probably going to see that as you get closer to 90. I just don't want to go really too far past 10 minutes. Square root of 45, we're going to break it up into square root 9 times square root 5. Okay, square root of n, I'm going to break it up into, square root of n to the 7th. I'm going to break that up into n to the 6th times n to the 1st. Okay, it's always the largest even possible and n to the first. So the square root of 9 we can take, it's 3. Square root of n to the 6th we can take. 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3, so n to the third is the square root of n to the 6th. Now these two guys we can't take the square root of, so they just kind of meet up underneath the radical. So 3 n to the third square root 5n. This one's a quick one, so I'm just going to do this one without writing anything. So we've got square root of 18 is going to be broken up into square root of 9 times the square root of 2. Okay, I can't take the square root of 2, nor can I take the square root of j to the first, because 1 is an odd power. So that's going to be our simplified answer. Okay, guys, good luck. I'll see you when we Zoom later in the week.